Tesla taxis are crossing 400,000, even 500,000 miles on original batteries and motors. One UK Tesla taxi hit 430,000 miles and still gets over 200 miles of range. But some private owners cannot even make it to 150,000 without a dead drive unit or a battery replacement that costs more than the car is worth. Same cars, same batteries, same motors. The only difference is a handful of maintenance habits that cost about $500 a year. Today, we are breaking down exactly what fleet drivers do that keeps their Teslas alive for 500,000 miles, and why skipping these things is quietly killing yours. Number 1. The oil change nobody told you about. You heard that right. Your Tesla has oil in it. Your electric motor has a gearbox. That gearbox is lubricated with oil and it has a filter. Just like oil in a gas engine, it breaks down over time. Metal shavings accumulate, lubrication gets worse, and the bearings inside your drive unit start wearing down. Now here is where it gets interesting. A company called Tesloop ran 11 Teslas as commercial shuttles in California. These cars were running all day, every day, racking up thousands of miles a week. They put 2.5 million collective miles on the fleet over 5 years. Their total maintenance cost averaged just 6 cents per mile. One of the main reasons is they changed their drive unit fluid religiously every 50,000 miles. The service costs about $200 to $300. Want to know what happens if you skip it? The bearings grind down, friction builds up, and eventually the whole drive unit fails. A replacement at Tesla runs from $5,800 to $10,900. On a Model X, it can hit $15,000. The cruel irony is that if you catch a worn bearing early, the parts cost about $400. But let it go and you are replacing the entire motor assembly. $200 every 50,000 miles, or a 5-figure repair bill. That is not even a choice. Here is something that might frustrate you. Tesla service centers do not always advertise this service. You might need to specifically ask for it, or find an independent Tesla specialist who actually knows these cars inside and out. But the drive unit is not the only thing hiding a fluid that needs attention. Number 2. The coolant that keeps your entire car alive. Your Tesla's thermal management system is basically the immune system of the car. It regulates the temperature of the battery pack, the drive motors, the cabin climate system, and the onboard charger. All of it runs through a network of coolant lines and pumps. When that system works properly, your battery stays in its happy zone between 68 and 104 degrees Fahrenheit, and your motors don't overheat under load. But coolant doesn't last forever. Over time, it degrades, loses its protective properties, and can actually become corrosive. When that happens, it starts eating away at the internal seals, gaskets, and metal surfaces of the very system it is supposed to protect. And here is what makes this tricky. There is no dashboard warning for degraded coolant, no check engine light, no weird smell. The system just slowly gets worse at its job until something overheats and fails. Fleet operators change their coolant every 4 to 5 years, or roughly every 50,000 miles. The service runs a few $100s. If the thermal management system fails because of degraded coolant, everything downstream suffers. The battery overheats and degrades faster. The motors run hotter and wear out sooner. The AC system cannot keep up. And the battery alone costs $13,000 to $22,000 to replace. That is why taxi operators treat coolant changes like oil changes on a gas car. It is basic survival for the vehicle. And speaking of keeping that battery alive, there is a reason fleet Teslas do not lose much range even after hundreds of thousands of miles. Number 3. Charging like a fleet operator. This one does not have to be complicated. The Schiphol Airport taxi fleet in Amsterdam ran 167 Teslas as airport taxis, each logging over 150,000 miles. They charged primarily on overnight alternating current chargers at their own depot. They barely used the supercharger network. The driver who holds the world record at 1.24 million miles on a single Model S avoids public fast chargers entirely. The pattern is clear. Level 2 home charging is the gentlest way to feed your battery, and fleet operators treat it as the default. For daily habits, if you have a long-range or performance model with an NCA or NMC battery, keep your charge between 20 and 80%. If you have a standard range or RWD model with an LFP battery, charge to 100% at least once a week. Tesla recommends that for LFP battery calibration, and always precondition before supercharging by navigating to the supercharger through the car's screen. Plugging in when the battery is cold stresses the battery and results in slower charging speeds for no reason. Fleet operators are not doing anything fancy. They are just consistent, and consistency is what gets a battery to 200,000 miles with 85 to 90% of its original capacity still intact. Now this next one sounds like a minor thing. Trust me, it can wreck your whole AC system. A $20 problem that turns into a $6,000 disaster. Number 4. The cabin air filter that kills your AC. Your cabin air filter catches dust, pollen, and debris before it enters the HVAC system. Tesla says replace it every 2 years on Model 3 and Model Y, and every 3 years on Model S and Model X. A replacement filter costs $15 to $60 if you do it yourself. Easy, right? Well, a lot of owners go 4, even 5 years without ever touching it. The filter clogs up, airflow drops, and your HVAC system has to work overtime just to push air through. All that extra strain falls on the AC compressor. If the compressor simply wears out, that is a $1,200 to $2,700 repair. Annoying but manageable. But here is the nightmare scenario. When a compressor fails catastrophically, it does not just stop working. It grenades internally and sends metal shrapnel through the entire climate loop. That contaminates the condenser, the expansion valves, and all the piping. Now you are not replacing one part. You are replacing the whole system. Documented repair bills for a contaminated AC system run $3,800 to $6,500. One Tesla owner's invoice hit $6,300. All because of a filter that costs less than a pizza. This is exactly the kind of thing that separates fleet Teslas from the ones that end up in the shop. Fleet operators replace these filters on schedule every single time, no exceptions. If you're finding this helpful, hit subscribe. We cover Tesla maintenance and ownership tips every week, and the last 3 items on this list are the ones nobody warns you about until it's too late. Number 5. 4,800 pounds versus everything underneath your car. Here's something a lot of Tesla owners forget. That battery pack bolted to the underside of your car doesn't just store energy. It also makes your Tesla one of the heaviest sedans on the road. We're talking 4,400 to 4,800 pounds, depending on the model. That's 1,000 pounds heavier than a comparable gas car. And every single pothole, speed bump, and rough road sends all that weight hammering through your suspension components. Bushings, ball joints, control arms, tie rods, they all wear faster on a Tesla than on a lighter vehicle. Fleet operators know this, which is why they inspect suspension at least once a year. The UK taxi that hit 430,000 miles didn't get there by ignoring clunking noises. The operator caught worn parts early and replaced them incrementally before one failure could cascade into 3. And cascade is exactly the right word. When one bushing fails, it throws off alignment. Bad alignment chews through tires unevenly. Uneven wear puts weird loads on adjacent suspension parts. Suddenly, you're not replacing one component, you're replacing an entire axle's worth. Control arm replacement on a Model 3 runs from $1,000 to $2,000 per side. Model S and Model X owners with air suspension, single air spring failures cost $700 to $1,500. Full overhauls hit $4,000 to $5,000. One Model X owner documented $16,000 in combined suspension work. An annual inspection catches a worn bushing for a couple $100. Ignoring it turns into a multi-$1,000 overhaul and a set of destroyed tires on top. And this next one might be the scariest item on the whole list because there's absolutely no warning sign until it's too late. Number 6. The fluid that's rotting from the inside. Brake fluid is hygroscopic. That means it absorbs water from the air. It does this whether you use your brakes or not. In fact, Tesla owners are more vulnerable to this than regular car owners, because regenerative braking means the mechanical brakes barely engage. The fluid just sits in those lines, quietly absorbing moisture month after month, year after year. Over time, that moisture corrodes the ABS module and the internal surfaces of your brake calipers from the inside out. You cannot see it happening. There is no dashboard warning, no weird noise, no puddle under the car, nothing. And because your regenerative braking handles most of the stopping, you might go years thinking your brakes are fine because the pedal still feels normal. Then one day you need to slam on the brakes in an emergency, and your stopping distance is longer than it should be because contaminated fluid has a lower boiling point. Or worse, corrosion has damaged your ABS components, and you are facing an expensive repair that was completely preventable. Tesla officially says, test every 4 years. Independent Tesla specialists recommend testing every 2 years. The test costs $100 to $150. That is it, just a test. If the fluid needs replacing, it is still a relatively cheap service. But waiting until corrosion takes hold turns it into a much bigger problem that never should have happened. Number 7, the simplest habit that does the most. This one sounds strange, but stick with me. Keep your Tesla plugged in whenever it is parked. Not because it needs to charge constantly, but because of what your car does differently when it has access to wall power. Your Tesla's thermal management system does not shut off when you park. When the car is plugged in, it can use electricity from the wall to keep the battery at a safe temperature. On a 100-degree day in Phoenix, your battery pack could be baking in the sun. Plugged in, the thermal management system kicks on and cools the pack using cheap wall power. Unplugged, it has to drain the battery itself just to cool the battery. You are literally burning range to prevent heat damage, and if the battery gets low enough, the system stops protecting itself entirely. The data backs this up. Recurrence research showed that Teslas in hot states like Arizona had 3% more battery degradation after 50,000 miles compared to mild climates. 3% might not sound like much, but over 200,000 miles, that compounds into serious range loss and accelerated aging of the most expensive component in your car. A battery replacement runs $13,000 to $22,000 depending on the model. Fleet operators keep their vehicles plugged in at base whenever they are not on the road. The Schiphol airport taxis were plugged into depot chargers between every shift. It is the easiest habit on this list, and it literally costs nothing, except remembering to reach for the plug when you get home. The 500,000-mile Tesla taxi isn't a miracle. It's just a car that got basic maintenance. Tesloop proved it across 2.5 million fleet miles. The Schiphol airport taxis proved it running 167 cars every single day. And the Tesla that dies at 100,000 miles, that's what happens when owners buy into the idea that these cars need nothing. Tesla built an incredibly durable machine, but durable doesn't mean indestructible. Take care of it and it'll take care of you for a very long time. If you own a Tesla, you need to see this video next. It covers the hidden functions built into your car that Tesla never told you about. Click it now.